My name is Elena, and while you listen to me now, I want you to understand that I'm not here to ask for compassion, nor to try to rewrite my story with a romantic or heroic ending, because I'm not a victim of the system, of fate, or of society. I was the author of my own chaos, and if today I have the courage to expose what I was, it's only because I have already experienced a darkness that no prison could overcome. For many years, I lived believing that coldness was a quality, that the absence of tears made me stronger, that feeling nothing placed me above ordinary people, as if the pain of others was merely fuel for my sick ego. I was feared, respected out of convenience, envied by those who didn't know the rot that existed within me, but above all, I was empty. I had a talent, turning evil into routine. The first time I took a life, I felt something inside me open like an ancient door that could never be closed again. What should have been shock turned into pleasure. The guilt that any normal human being would feel simply didn't appear. I looked in the mirror that night and didn't see a monster. I saw someone finally in control. While the whole world seemed to crumble because of feelings and morality, I walked firmly without hesitation, because inside me there was no room for love, empathy, or conscience. I used to call myself jokingly the woman without tears. Today I know that I was just that. The soulless woman. I believed I ruled fear, but fear ruled me. But none of that prepared me for the moment when I finally faced what I had always tried to ignore: death. And it was precisely there that my mask began to crumble. If this story has already started to move you, keep reading. What will be revealed may change what you believe about life, death, and eternity. If you want to follow other testimonies like this, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. This helps this message reach those who need to hear it before it's too late. When crime entered my life, it didn't come with violence. It came with seduction. There were no screams, no blood, no chaos at the beginning. There was only the silent promise that I would never again be weak, ignored, or humiliated. I was too young to understand that the enemy never presents himself with the face of an enemy. He presents himself as a solution. And when I realized it, I was already immersed in a world where adrenaline was more addictive than any drug, and control was more intoxicating than any drink. I started out as someone who helped, who observed, who just handed it over and didn't ask. But crime never gives just a taste. It feeds, then demands payment. In a few months, I was no longer the girl who observed. I was the woman who decided. The feeling of power coursed through my veins like liquid fire. People were afraid of me. Men respected my command. Money flowed in effortlessly. Doors opened when I appeared. I believed I had won at life. I told myself that the world was divided between predators and prey, and I knew exactly who I had chosen to be. I began to dress like power, to walk like power, to speak like power. People obeyed me not because of my intelligence or my leadership, but because I carried with me a dangerous silence, the kind of silence that precedes a tragedy. When I arrived somewhere, no one breathed deeply. I saw in their eyes something that soothed my wounded ego: terror. And the more fear I saw in others, the more invincible I felt. I became the most distorted version of myself. Instead of seeking love, I sought control. Instead of wanting to be cared for, I wanted to be feared. I thought that was victory. I thought that was freedom. I thought I was on top. But every power that evil gives us, it demands repayment with interest. I just didn't know how much. Because while I celebrated my rise, something inside me was slowly dying, like a lamp that loses its brightness without anyone noticing. I was admired but hated, rich but miserable, influential but completely alone. I believed I was in control, when in reality I was being manipulated like a puppet, trapped in a web of my own choosing. And yet, At that moment, I remained blind, proud, arrogant. Until day of the first death, before we continue, do you believe that sin begins with small concessions? Comment below. Yes, everything starts small. The first time I took a life didn't happen in a dark alley, nor in a situation where I was cornered. It happened in broad daylight, in front of people who knew me, and I will never forget the sound that preceded the absolute silence. That moment wasn't an accident, nor an instinctive reaction. It was a conscious, calculated, cold choice. As the trigger slowly descended under the weight of my finger, my mind didn't beg for mercy, didn't scream for me to stop, didn't warn me about the danger of crossing a point of no return. Everything inside me was at peace with the idea that that life would be extinguished, as if it were just another task on the day's to-do list. When the shot rang out, the world seemed to slow down. I watched the look of surprise in the eyes of the person who fell before me, while the metallic sound of the gun still vibrated in the air. I expected to feel trembling, nausea, guilt, or even despair. Instead, I felt something completely different, something that should have frightened me more than any blood in that scene. I felt Ghana power so intense that my heart raced and my breath became heavy, not from fear, but from pleasure. In that instant, I understood that true death did not happen before me. True death occurred within me. My conscience tried to warn me. It was just a fragile whisper, almost imperceptible. This isn't you. I ignored it. To justify the irreparable, I started telling myself lies. It was necessary. It was him or me. I only did what needed to be done. With each phrase I repeated, the door inside my soul opened a little wider. I didn't realize that, at that exact moment, evil ceased to be something external and began to reside within me. And it was there, in that second, when the emptiness seemed more pleasant than the truth, that something spiritual was activated around me. But the darkest revelation was yet to come. When evil feels comfortable, it doesn't stay silent. It requires repetition. Repetition turns any crime into routine, and when routine sets in, something deeper begins to die. After that first death, I no longer needed to fight against my conscience because it no longer had the strength to speak to me. It was as if a thick layer of ice had formed inside my chest, preventing any feeling from getting through. At first, I remembered the victims' faces, their wide eyes, their silent pleas for mercy. But over time, those faces became blurred, as if they were blurry images seen through a window wet with rain. I told myself they weren't people. They were just obstacles, part of a game I needed to win to stay alive in that world I, myself, had chosen. With each new crime, something inside me grew a little quieter, as if the threads connecting me to humanity were being cut one by one. No matter how many begged, cried, or trembled before me, nothing could penetrate that coldness I had nurtured with such zeal. I looked in the mirror and didn't see blood on my hands. I saw power. The tears I should have shed transformed into a dark pride that made me believe I had risen a step above everyone else, as if no law, human or divine, could touch me. It's terrifying to realize how comfortable evil can seem when the soul is seared. At some point, I realized I was sleeping soundly after each crime, without dreams, without pangs of conscience. The absence of remorse became my pillow, and indifference became my blanket. I thought myself invincible, when in reality I was already completely enslaved. Evil didn't ask me for explanations. It only demanded continuity. And I obeyed. I used to laugh when someone talked about God, as if faith were a childish fantasy. I said that hell was just an invention to scare weak people. I believed that power and control were all that mattered. The irony is that the more I thought I was in control, the more of a prisoner I became of the very evil I nurtured. The emptiness inside me was too comfortable, and when I realized it, I could no longer distinguish darkness from peace. I had normalized evil, and evil had normalized my soul, until the day the sound of a gunshot pierced the warm air of the early morning, bringing with it a sensation I had never experienced before, the metallic smell of death drawing closer to me. Because when indifference becomes complete, hell finally demands its presence. I always imagined that if death ever knocked on my door, it would arrive like a scene from a movie, with cars speeding, a police chase, and me fighting until the last second to maintain control. But when it came, it was as silent as a whisper. That night, everything seemed too ordinary to be the end. I was in the car, the city slept, and the radio played some random song I wasn't even paying attention to. There was no rush, no visible danger, no sense that anything was about to change. The world seemed so normal that it even gave the impression that evil had forgotten me. But evil doesn't forget anyone. It just waits for the ideal moment to collect what we have sown. I remember the exact moment the glass shattered. A dry, quick, sharp sound. There was no warning, no time to react. The shot went through the glass as if it were made of paper and hit my chest with such brutal force that the air was ripped from my lungs. I felt the warmth of the blood rushing down, not as pain, but as a shockwave that coursed through every part of my body. A fraction of a second was enough for me to understand that there, in that tiny point between one breath and the next, I was no longer in charge of anything. As I staggered, the car lost control, and everything around me began to blur. The street lights turned into long streaks, like hastily applied brush strokes on a dark canvas. I tried to grip the steering wheel, but my hands no longer responded. The world slowed down, as if someone had slowed down life. I knew I was dying, but the most terrifying thing was realizing that I was accepting. For the first time, I felt fear not of what I was leaving behind, but of what awaited me on the other side. When my body gave way, I heard a sound I never thought I'd hear. Absolute silence. A silence so profound, it felt like it had weight. And it was in that silence, when everything inside me should have faded away, that something happened. I blinked. And when I blinked, I was no longer inside my body. I thought the worst thing was to die. But I was about to discover that dying isn't the end. It's the beginning of revelation. When the sound of the gunshot faded and the world around me plunged into silence, something strange happened. I no longer felt pain, weight, or the hot air that had previously burned my skin. For a brief moment, I thought I had fainted, but then something inside me began to shift, as if an invisible force were pulling me out of my body. And suddenly, I found myself there, lying on the ground, motionless, while a trickle of blood spread across the asphalt, forming a grotesque pattern that seemed to pulsate with a life of its own. I was standing looking at myself. My first sensation was confusion. The second, terror. I tried to touch my body, but my hand pierced the air as if I were made of wind. The sound of the world was different, muffled, distant, as if coming from underwater. Sirens began to echo. Red lights cut through the darkness, and I watched everything without being able to scream, without being able to ask for help, without being able to go back. It was as if time was watching me impassive, while I, for the first time, had no control over anything. In the hospital, when I saw my body on the stretcher, surrounded by doctors and beeping machines, I felt a dizziness that no living being could endure. One of the paramedics shouted, "She's going!" And I realized that she was me, or at least the shell of what I had been. I tried to fight against that force pulling me away. I tried to shout God's name, but the voice didn't exist. The air didn't exist. The sound didn't exist. It was like floating within an absolute absence. Gradually, the atmosphere changed. The hospital walls disappeared and a thick fog began to form. The feeling of cold didn't come from my body, but from my soul. And the more I tried to look around, the more I realized that that was not the world of the living. It was at that moment that a presence approached. It didn't walk, it didn't speak, but I knew with an inexplicable certainty that something holy was there. The atmosphere transformed, and my spirit, even amidst the terror, felt something my body had never felt before: divine authority. The fog surrounding me was so dense it felt like it had weight. With each step, if it could even be called a step, I felt I was moving into something that didn't belong to human logic. There was no ground, no air, no direction. There was only a void that seemed to know all my secrets. The silence of that place wasn't an absence of sound. It was like a consciousness observing, evaluating every fragment of my story. I always considered myself fearless, but there, a kind of fear existed that didn't approach the body, but rather the soul. And then he appeared. He didn't walk in, he didn't approach slowly. He was simply there, as if he had always been. I didn't recognize him by his facial features, nor by any representation I had seen in paintings or crucifixes. I recognized him due to the impact. His presence didn't need to be explained to the spirit. The spirit simply knew. It was Jesus, not the frail Jesus carried in religious festivals, not the Jesus used as a symbol on T-shirts and stickers. It was Jesus, King Jesus, fair the Jesus, that nobody shows often, the Jesus judge. His eyes were so intense that I couldn't hold his gaze. There was no anger in them, nor contempt. There was something far worse, absolute truth. His eyes pierced through everything I had built as a mask. He looked at me, and in that look, all my actions were exposed. He didn't need to say anything. I saw myself. I saw myself in every crime, in every choice, in every door I opened to evil. It was like watching a timeline of my own destruction. I tried to justify my choices. I tried to say that I was a victim of circumstances, of poverty, of abandonment, of the environment in which I grew up. But even before the words could take shape, they vanished, as if they weren't even allowed to exist. The truth before him was so strong that no lie could survive. At some point, I realized that I wasn't being judged by him. I was being revealed to myself. The absence of an accusation was worse than any sentence. He didn't need to condemn me. I condemned myself the moment I understood who I had truly become. It's strange, but at that instant I wasn't afraid of hell. I was afraid of him, because before him, I realized I had spent my whole life chasing power and ignored the only power that truly existed. I tried to look away, but I couldn't. And then he did something that struck me like a lightning bolt. He showed people what I had done. When Jesus raised his hand, there was no explosion, thunder, or any grand effect. There was only a simple, silent gesture. And in that instant, everything around me opened up as if reality were a curtain being torn. What I saw was not a symbolic vision. It was not a metaphor, and it was not imagination. It was raw spiritual truth. Suddenly, I was standing before the people whose lives I had destroyed. Not only those who died by my hand, but also those who bore scars because of my choices. Mothers who never slept again, children who grew up in fear, fathers who buried their own dreams along with the coffins I helped fill. Each face had a story, and each story had a destiny that I interrupted. Jesus didn't say, "Look what you've done." He said something infinitely deeper and more irreparable. "You didn't just take lives. You interrupted them, stories that I wrote." I saw a woman who should have become a nurse, but never got to live to save anyone. I saw a young man who would have been a father, would have loved his daughter, would have changed his community, but never held a baby in his arms. I saw a man who should have overcome poverty and transformed other lives with hope, but who only met his end at my hands. Jesus showed me destinies, not bodies. The future, not just the past. The pain I felt wasn't physical, it was spiritual. I felt the emptiness of what I had stolen. With each revelation, I tried to look away, but I couldn't. The truth was anchored within me. The presence of Jesus didn't accuse me, didn't shout, didn't push me towards torment. His presence revealed, and the revelation was unbearable because it showed something I never wanted to admit. I always had a choice. Then he said something that destroyed any argument I still held hidden. You were warned, not by the world, through the silence of your own soul. At that moment, I understood where I was. It wasn't heaven, it wasn't hell. It was the border where truths are exposed and masks are torn off. And when the truth became irresistible, something pulled me back with a speed nobody could withstand. I felt like I was being returned, not as a reward, but as a second chance. Everything went dark, everything faded. But before returning, Jesus spoke one last time. Live as one who has seen eternity. When I opened my eyes, the first sensation wasn't pain nor fear. It was shame. I was in a hospital bed, the strong smell of antiseptic permeating the air, and cold handcuffs bound my wrists to the bed. It was as if the world were announcing, "You've returned, but not as you came in." My breathing was heavy, and every movement felt like a struggle, but none of that compared to the weight crushing my soul. I didn't return powerful. I returned. Ravine, the woman who had once walked with her chest puffed out and an arrogant look, had disappeared. In her place was someone who finally saw the abyss into which she had thrown herself. The tears came unbidden, and that's when I realized something inside me had truly changed. I, who prided myself on not crying, was crying as if each tear were a silent plea for forgiveness. The nurse came in, and noticing my state, left without asking questions. Perhaps she had seen that moment more times than she could admit. When I was alone again, I felt that the presence that had confronted me on the other side hadn't gone away. It wasn't a presence of condemnation. It was a presence of opportunity. Even without strength, I murmured the words I never thought I would say, "Jesus, I don't want to be that person anymore." There was no audible response, nor a light descending from the ceiling, but something inside me opened, as if a door I had kept locked for years had finally given way. When I was taken to prison, I could have hidden my experience. I could have gone back to wearing the mask, but for the first time, I didn't want to impress anyone anymore. I wanted to start over. I started talking to other inmates, not with superiority, but with humility. I told them what I had seen. I told them the truth. I told them how emptiness had become my prison long before the handcuffs. The second chance wasn't freedom. It was transformation. I didn't receive a perfect new life. I received a new life, true. I didn't come back to be entertainment. I didn't come back to become a romanticized story of overcoming adversity or to feed morbid curiosity. I came back to be a living warning, to be proof that no one is so far from God that they cannot be reached, and to testify that no one plunges so deep into darkness that Christ cannot descend there and bring them back to life. When I walked out of that hospital and saw the world again, I realized that the real prison had never been the concrete, the walls, the bars, the padlocks, or the guards. The prison was inside me. I was my own cell. When the prison doors first closed behind me, I felt hatred, anger, indignation, and a desire to prove to the world that I could not be tamed. I thought that place was punishment, that cold, silent structure had been built to destroy me. But when the door closed for the last time and I left that place, I understood that prison was not punishment. Prison was protection. It was the only environment where the noise of the world ceased enough for me to hear my own soul. It was there, when no one applauded me, when no one feared me, when I could not hide behind status, when power did not serve me, and when ego could no longer sustain me, that I finally heard the voice I had spent my whole life trying to silence. It took me a while to realize that living in pursuit of control is just another form of captivity. Outside of prison, I was chained to pride, to lies, to the power I thought I possessed. Inside, when there was nothing left to defend, no personas to uphold, no weapons to wield, I was forced to confront what was truly inside me. And it was in this emotional and spiritual nakedness that I discovered that God never wanted to destroy my life. He wanted to save my soul. Life isn't about status, material victories, momentary achievements, or winning a world at war. Life is about eternity. It's about destiny. It's about where the soul goes when the heart stops beating. We live as if we were going to stay here forever, as if there were infinite time to change, as if regret could be a plan for when we are old, tired, lucid, and willing to abandon our sins. But the truth is that no one controls the instant when the last thread of life is extinguished within the chest. I spent years believing I had time. Today, I know that time never belonged to me. I spent years justifying my mistakes. Today, I understand that every justification we make becomes a chain that binds us. That each "it's not quite like that" strengthens the prison we build within ourselves. And that the more we feed sin, the more it devours us from within, until nothing remains but ashes. I thought I was fooling people, systems, and laws, when in the end, I was only fooling myself. When I stood before Jesus, I understood that no one comes before him accompanied. There is no audience, there is no lawyer, there is no narrative. There is only him and who we have become. The moment he looked into my eyes, I realized I had spent my entire life running from the only gaze that could set me free. When Jesus looks at someone, he doesn't look at what that person shows to the world. He looks at what they carry in their heart. And in the face of absolute truth, there are no masks. There are no excuses. There are no arguments. There I realized that living for sin is voluntarily walking towards death. And I understood something that changed everything forever. God doesn't send anyone away from him. We are the ones who choose to distance ourselves. If I could look into your eyes right now, I would say with all the sincerity I possess, don't wait to lose everything to see what's essential. Don't wait for life to hurt you to awaken you. Don't wait to hit rock bottom to finally look up. Don't wait to die to want to start living. I needed to die to understand that living isn't about controlling anything. Living is about surrendering everything. Today, I choose something different. I choose not to be remembered for the evil I did, but for the transformation I received. I choose to bear witness so that no one else has to go through the hell I went through. I choose to be proof that Jesus saves even those whom the world has called a lost cause. If I could be reached, you can too. It doesn't matter who you were. What matters is who you decide to be after hearing the truth. If this story has stirred something in you, don't ignore it. God may be calling you. If you want to continue this journey of healing, truth, and spiritual awakening with me, make a choice now. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like.